The trail is a metaphor for change. Although hiking, and specifically endurance hiking, is now a big part of my day-to-day, it's not just about exercise. It's about transformation. Each step is a movement towards clarity, purpose, and identity. But movement is one thing, sharing insights gained is another. As a U.S. Marine veteran, I created this space to help other veterans gain clarity, purpose, and identity. Let's walk this path together. This is Trail to Transformation.
Most people aren't broken, they're just dysregulated. Chronic stress, pain, anxiety, and burnout aren't mindset failures. They're nervous systems stuck in survival. I'm Leland Holgate, combat veteran and neuroscientist, and I created the Welcome Home method to help people rewire their nervous systems with breath. To go deeper, visit thewillfulwarrior.com.
Hey, welcome back to the show, everybody. Of course, my name is Dr. Keith McNally, and I'm here with Kevin Snyder. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Dr. Keith, good to be with you, buddy.
I do appreciate it. And just for reference, for those who are watching and listening, you are my coach. And so I have hired you because I want to get on stage. And we're going to give you an opportunity to kind of share some of that. And I'm very thankful for you being here with me because you have a very special story to share. And this is a very personal story for you. And actually, based on our previous conversations, this is kind of what launched you into being the person that you are, being the speaker who you are, because you wanted to make an impact on other people's lives. So before we actually get deep into that conversation, let everybody know who you are, please.
I'm Kevin, based in North Carolina, father, husband. I'm also a professional speaker, which means this is my business. And I do speaker coaching as well, which happened very organically to help other speakers and authors share their message. But ultimately, yeah, what I've discovered over the past 20 years of speaking is that vulnerability and really being able to share our story with a message can really not just impact and influence people, but to your point, and what you're all about, Keith, is it's about transformation, right? We're all on a path. We're all on a journey. And for me, I struggled with depression when I was just 12 years old. So for me to evolve and transform from a 12-year-old boy with depression to becoming a motivational speaker, I mean, I'm living proof that anything's possible.
Well, I appreciate that. So you just kind of literally jumped right in there and kind of hit it to the
You told me
backstory.
to introduce myself. I didn't know what
No,
that.
that's absolutely totally perfect. And so, because I get a lot from you have a mastermind group, and I join you twice a month in two different group sessions, and you and the people that you are connected with all have their own special story, all have their own transformation story, and since my life-changing events in 2021 and 2022, I have slowly learned to be comfortable with my own story, become vulnerable, as you
Yeah.
have identified, and slowly walk that pathway of transformation. But this isn't about me. Let's go back, please, if you can, to where your story truly begins. And if you're ready, let's kind of dive into it.
Yeah. When I was 12 years old, a couple things had happened uh, where, in a short period of time, where I didn't know how to process it. I grew up in a very loving family. My dad was a preacher. My mom was a teacher. I was a middle kid, so I had an older brother, younger sister. So some people would say I was a PK, a preacher's kid, and a middle kid, like double whammy, right? Um, no, but I remember one specific moment where I lost my girlfriend, a girl that I really liked a lot. I lost my best friend because he was dating her behind my back. My soccer buddies were making fun of me. So I quit playing soccer, which was a sport that I loved. I got kicked off the soccer team because I stopped showing up for practice. And all those things happened within like a 1 month period of time. And I lost everything in my mind that was important to me. My girlfriend, my best friend, and a sport that I literally, that's all I did was play soccer. And that became what I would call like a downward spiral. Because I didn't know how to process that. I felt rejected. I felt confused, hurt. Um, and yeah, that became, I isolated myself. I stopped doing the things I normally did, throw in some hormones, right? Adolescence. And next thing I know, 6 months later, I'd lost 30 pounds. And I was in a dark, deep space. I had insomnia, thoughts of how to take my own life. Um, and my mom saved my life because she pulled me out of school one day, took me to the doctor, and the doctors diagnosed me with depression and an eating disorder called anorexia. But this was the 80s, and specifically 1988. They had no treatment for me. The doctors literally looked at my mom. I was in the room too, and there was three doctors in the room, and they literally said, "We've never treated an adolescent boy with depression." And we only thought eating disorders could happen in girls. So make me feel more unnormal, right? So counseling for me, because there was nowhere to put me. The only place they had for me was Butner Correctional Facility, hour and a half away, where Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, was. Bernie Madoff. Currently, if depending when you're listening to this podcast, R. Kelly, and also Joe from Tiger King, right? So my mom looked at the doctors and literally responded and said, he didn't break the law, right? Mental health, right? And so my point is this: have we come a long way since 1988? Absolutely, from an awareness standpoint, from a treatment standpoint, but we still have a long ways to go. And that would become my journey to healing, which is like, well, how did I get better? How did my recovery? What did that look like? That's a whole. Maybe we'll dive into that today. But counseling, I'm alive. I truly feel this. I'm alive for two reasons. Number one, the unconditional love of my mom and my dad, and they didn't understand it either, but they loved on me. And so when I talk to parents now, when I talk to professionals, I always, even in my motivational keynotes, I always talk about mindset, right? And mental health. There is no health without mental health. None of us are alone. None of us are immune. The only way to change the conversation around mental health is by having it. And that's why stigmas exist, right? And stigmas are the number one reason people don't seek treatment. And you don't need a diagnosis to have mental health issues, right? We all have them. I have them. I love sharing with my audiences. Everything I share with you today, I struggle with from time to time. So there's tools in my mental toolbox that I know how to access. Right? I love being just real, and it's like, I know it's not literally, I want them to know, like, I'm not a naturally motivated person. And I'm also not a natural speaker. So quit judging me. Right. And, but my journey to recovery really became the second reason I'm alive is because of counseling. And the first 6 months of my counseling was absolute silence. I mean, I didn't want to be there. I thought counseling was the problem. And then when we finally discovered that I needed to talk through something, there was a moment, and I'll shut up if you want, but there was a specific session that triggered, it would become my turning point. And then the journey began to get better. So,
Well, let's go back one step and let's go forward two instead of going back two and go forward one. Um, I want to hit one really important thing, then I do want to talk about the slow steps forward. The support of your mom and your dad. And so we do have to give them a loving shout out if they're, I hope, are they still alive? Are we,
that's my mama.
yeah.
Keep her right here in front of me. Sorry, Dad. There's another picture of you, but it's over there. Yeah, they're still with us right now, and very close to them still.
Okay, good. Because then the follow up to that specific question, the community of support. So we're still talking, you said 1988. And so you were 12 years old. The idea of mental health and how to treat it very different then than now.
Right.
So the love and support of family, friends had to be instrumental. So can you speak to that quickly, or how did that work with you and your situation?
Well, the doctors did tell my mom if Kevin loses another ounce, we're going to have to put him into the facility. Like he's risking. I had wrestled the year before at the 110 weight class as a seventh grader, and I
Okay.
had some muscle. I worked out, blah blah blah. But that next 6 months later, I was 76 pounds, five
Oh
foot
God.
four.
Wow.
So the doctors knew, and that's the reason. I mean, I got real clever too with um, adding extra layers of clothes on to not look thin. Of course, my face looked like a skeleton. And in my programs too, in my presentations, I actually have a picture of what I was sixth grade, seventh grade, and eighth grade. And I prepare my audience to see because it looks like I was at a um, concentration camp, literally. Um,
That much
and I
weight
forget.
loss.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, and just the sadness too. I mean, the feeling of. So completely forget where your question is. Sorry. Um,
I want you to talk about the support you got from parents and
yeah,
family and friends.
right. And so my mom, literally, because we did counseling 3 sessions a week, and there was an hour and a half drive one way for
Mhm.
an hour session 3 times a week. I mean, my mom would become not just my taxi driver, but somebody that through unconditional love. Again, I none of us understood it. Um, that just her presence, and the counseling would eventually become my support. I mean, once I had the turning point and it was my first breakdown, we knew where we needed to go. Like we knew the sun was coming up. We needed to look up, and that's really when I started then to begin to process what had happened, um, and I think too at that time I wasn't really eating, so your body's not getting nutrients. If I was eating, it wasn't the right things. It was stupid. It was just I didn't know how to diet. Um, And so I think that too, when you're not feeding yourself the right nutrients, I mean, imagine this: you're in the middle of the ocean and you're not eating, right, for days and weeks. You're gonna eventually your body's gonna kind of start to consume itself. You're gonna go crazy, like literally. You're not mentally gonna have the right things firing, the right synapses and things like that. So for me, counseling and my parents became the support. I still was isolated from my friends. I lost a lot of friends too. I mean, looking back, it wasn't their fault, but I didn't want to be around people. Mentally, I thought like I'm the weird guy now. Like, and then that's fast forward a little bit. Once the sessions went to twice a week, then once a week, then once a month, once a quarter. By the time about fast forward about 2 years, I was seeing my counselor about once a month, more so for kind of like touch points and check-ins. And I remember I'll never forget my senior year in high school. I saw her about every 3 to 6 months. It was just more like routine maintenance.
Mhm.
Um, and I remember she and I both hugging and crying in one of my final sessions. And I said, at some time in my life, I don't know how, I don't know, I'm not a writer. At least I told myself that at the time. I said, I want to write a book to help other people through my story because I felt so alone, and I'm lucky to be alive, and I'm so glad that I found you. And that's also what inspired my speaking. I had no desire to ever become a speaker. I learned speaking by hiring speakers when I worked in higher education, and that's a whole other story. But would become that's the genesis and the inspiration behind my first book, which I don't know if you can see the title. It's not a plug
Mhm.
for it. It's more so, as much as I wanted to be normal growing up, my first book was titled Think Different.
Mhm.
Like I had to reframe and rewire my own mindset. And that's what my counselor helped me with.
So talk about the stages of growth. There had to be a point. there had to be a place where you knew something could be different because you got there, and then something else had to be different and you got there. So there's a mixture of what's going on in your head, but also what's
Yeah.
going on in your body because you touched on that. Um, so
Yeah.
collectively, we talked offline about one of the things that you had to get to was a certain weight again. So your body had to be healthy again.
Yeah.
How did that all come together?
That's a great question. And I've not thought about this until recently, and maybe it was the spark from our conversation prior to this, where like the first several months of my counseling, again, I just stared at the floor. I didn't talk. It was silence. I mean, talk about awkward for the counselor. I thought being there was the problem. And then after 60 minutes, she would say, well, our session's about over today. I mean, she would try to talk to me, but I just would refuse to answer. And then several months had gone by, whether it was 3 months or 6 months. It was many months, though. And I remember, like, I just went off on her. And I was like, I don't want to be here. This sucks. I'm being here is the problem. And I just, like, it was very cathartic. And she says, Kevin, that's why we're here. I mean, however, I just remember Dr. Carroll just having grace on me. And it was almost like that drive home. And she asked me, what would you do if you're listening to a station, like music in the car that you hate? What would you do? Well, back then, you change the station, right? So she was trying to get me to understand, just because you have a negative thought doesn't mean you have to agree with it. Like a negative song, a song you hate, you're going to change the station, right? Well, I didn't know I had that kind of ability or that awareness. So I think it started with awareness. And then I reframed that counseling wasn't the problem. Counseling was actually going to help me get better. And then that's really when the work would begin. And at that same time, I wanted to wrestle again. So this kind of, now with that context, here's kind of what the goal became for me. It wasn't necessarily to gain weight. The doctor said to me, there was an agreement. The doctor said, if Kevin can gain back up to 90 pounds, because he's like, what's the lowest weight class at wrestling? And it was 90 pounds. So I was 76 pounds, 78 pounds. I kind of hover around 70. I mean, I knew I needed to gain weight. I would have died if I stayed at 76. I would have died. But as I was getting mentally a little bit better, I was having now to eat. And even my dad, and this is in the book too, my dad asked me one day, I put it in there. I didn't remember this conversation, but he told me about the conversation later, how startling it was for him to hear it. He said, hey, there was a time you and I were in the car together, and I asked you, what is it about food that makes you scared? Like, what is it? Well, it's not about food, right? Number one. But at the time, he said that I said to him, he goes, you said to me, Dad, imagine standing next to the edge of a pool filled with sharks. And eating food means you have to jump in. And my dad just said, wow. Because my dad was kind of meat and potatoes guy. He didn't understand why I couldn't eat. I mean, who doesn't like food? Well, somebody that's dealing with an eating disorder. So wrestling for me to gain weight back to 90 pounds became the goal. And it wasn't so I could control my weight, although some people would say, well, yeah, wrestling, you have to control your weight. No, it gave me a goal. It gave me, hey, if I can gain to 90 pounds or 89 pounds, then I can wrestle again. So fast forward 6 months, whether it was 6 months, 8 months, it was several months. And it was hard, dude. I mean, I was still doing 500 push-ups, 500 sit-ups a day. I was running 10 miles a day. I did all that before my parents even woke up. I snuck out of the house to do it. Because every time I thought I put weight on or was eating food, I was getting fat. So, I mean, I was in shape. I was fit. I was strong. And so that by the time I got back to 90 pounds, and I still remember this, and I'll shut up here in about 30 seconds. My mom had been talking to Coach Hines, the wrestling coach, several times, just to kind of keep him posted where my weight gain was. And I wasn't able to practice on the wrestling team, but I was at wrestling practice every day, kind of like the water boy. I was there to kind of be like the manager to help. But when I gained that up to 89 pounds, then I could actually practice. And the day before, when I hit 89 pounds, and I had a letter from the doctor and my mom who called the coach and said, Kevin can now practice because he's at 89 pounds. The next day was a wrestling match against our arch rivals, Tuning Middle School. Still remember it. So there was 2 other guys in my weight class. And what we did the day before a match, you'd have a wrestle off. And whoever won the wrestle off would then wrestle in the match, if that makes sense. Kind of who's the starter for us. Well, I'll never forget, it was Jimmy Wood and some other guy. But Jimmy Wood was like the top guy in 90 pounds. And he was good. So what's up, Jimmy, if you're listening to this? He and I haven't talked since. But I beat Jimmy.
Okay.
I beat Jimmy Wood. So the next day I wrestled. But that night, what I didn't know, Keith, was that Coach Hines had called my mom and said, hey, I'm sure you're aware Kevin's wrestling tomorrow, but I want to prepare you. He's wrestling a state champion. And I'm concerned that if he were to get beat, which he was expecting me to, he goes, I'm just concerned for Kevin and his mental health. So he's preparing my mom to help me. I didn't know I was wrestling a state champ. I pinned the state champion the next day.
Wow.
I would become a conference champion in wrestling. So for me, wrestling, it wasn't just, there was probably a little bit that was like, hey, now I can control my weight and stay at 90 during the season. But no, it became purpose. It became a goal for me to work toward, and then also, to stay committed in a way, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. We only have about 2 minutes left, and so I want you to do. The audience is probably going to want you back, and so there's a whole lot of the conversation that needs to continue. I would like to have you back too, if that's okay. But in the short amount of time that we have left, as an adult reflecting back and wanting to help other parents deal with their sons or daughters, but their sons, deal with depression. Give us some insight, please, of how to deal with that.
Yeah, and I tell you, this is something. My daughter is 6, getting ready to turn 7. My son's 5. Genetically, they've got a loaded. Their predisposition mentally. There's because of me, and I'm thinking of this as well. Like the question of you. Well, my daughter or son struggled like I did, so I'm doing everything I can for positive affirmation, right? To love, to make unconditional love, I think, is ultimately the answer. Unconditional love, but also professional help. Professional help. Absolutely. I mean, that's counseling, and it's not. It's part of the solution. And even if there's nothing wrong, to it's like, hey, you don't just go to counseling when you think you've got a problem. No, you go to counseling because that's where you've developed strength, regardless of where you're at. I mean, I still have a mental health counselor I talk to. It's like they're like a sounding board for me. So I think professional counseling is ultimately that's where the professional comes in to kind of help rewire and reframe.
Sounds good. And so, Kevin, I do appreciate this conversation as always. And of course, you're going to see me in your group. But for those who are watching and listening, I want to thank you for joining us. And as always, I will see you on the trail. Take care. Thank you for watching Trail to Transformation TV. To support these conversations or to support the foundation, I would ask that you go to givebutter.com/T3missionorg. That's the letter T, the number 3, MISSIONORG. Or go directly to our website at t3mission.org and click the donate button. Or just scan the QR code as you see it on the screen. And as always, I will see you on the trail.